Welcome to the Escape and Empower podcast. Escape from the corporate rat race to empowered franchise ownership. Are you ready to take control of your destiny, follow your dreams, and live life on your own terms? Join our hosts, Dave and Pete, for insights on how to break free from the corporate grind, ditch the 9-to-5, and step into empowered franchise ownership.
Welcome to the Escape and Empower podcast. My name is Pete Gilfill, and I'm here with my partner, Dave Greenberg. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Pete. What a wonderful morning to be with you today.
Oh, it is awesome. When our passion, our vision to help people is to really escape the corporate rat race and empower themselves through franchise ownership. And that's our mission. And we always try to kind of cover stuff that helps people make that journey to escape exactly like you and I did, right? Both of us, great corporate careers. We now are free. We have control of our destiny. We're living life on our own terms. So maybe what I thought we'd talk about today with our webinar is this idea that we get great training as executives, right? We get all this experience and we can take that experience and we can leverage it with the franchise business. What do you think?
I think that's awesome, Pete, because Ford Motor Company, bless their heart, invested a lot of money in you and I. And we were great benefactors of it. And whether it was our individual skill sets of whether it was sales, product, marketing, or just over general manager experience as we grew to bigger and more responsible roles, it taught us a lot. And everything that I learned back then, we use today.
Let's unpack that because executives, they're kind of set up, right? You learn how to build and manage teams. You learn how to execute strategic plans, analyze financials, to optimize operations, to focus on how you drive increased customer satisfaction and certainly building relationships and influence and stuff like that. So let's unpack this. So I believe there are 10 things that executives learn, they gain in the corporate world that they can leverage as they become a business owner and more specifically a franchise owner. So what would be the first one you think about as a corporate executive? We learn it and we can leverage that with a franchise business.
Well, I love this one because it's what you're going to do in the investigation process when you're doing your due diligence on franchises once we figure out the right fit for you. How many times have we put together a plan and built that strategically, tactically, and financial with KPIs? We arm wrestled with the finance folks and all the stakeholders putting it together. But at the end of the day, we built a plan. We had a vision behind that plan, and then we built how we were going to execute that plan. And Pete, it's no different. When you introduced me to my franchise fits, as I did my due diligence, I built a plan. And actually, it's one thing that Laurie really bought into was, hey, here's your investment. Here's your first 12 months to ramp. Here's your ongoing year. Here's how we scale this thing to a multi-million-dollar business. And, you know, the funny thing is we all know forecasts are wrong, but we had a structure and a vision to how we were going to build a meaningful business and the time frame in which we were going to do that. And thankfully, I learned that at Ford.
Right. And if you don't have a plan, you're not going anywhere, right? It's hard to go somewhere if you don't know where you're going. And so that gave us great skills. And I was smiling when you were talking about because I remember the pain associated with putting together those plans and presenting and getting knocked down and stuff like that. But it was great skills. And you bring those skills to a franchise and that allows you to build a business quickly, right? You put a plan in place, you work that plan. So certainly that idea of planning and strategy. All right, what would be a second kind of thing that we can take from a corporate level position, that experience, and we can apply it to a franchise business?
Well, I love the idea of building teams and leadership. It's something we all schooled on, measured on, 360 reviews, stakeholder input, what kind of manager you were going to be. We learned how to hire, train, and motivate teams. And we understood how to build a framework around performance management, leadership behaviors, how to build culture, and all those things, whether it's bigger in a big way or a small way, in my view, totally come down to you as an entrepreneur and building your own business, because it doesn't really change. And I think the leadership and team building aspect that and skill set that you gain totally translate into what you're going to do as an entrepreneur?
I think a high performing team is the difference between a really successful business and one that's not doing so well, right? It is about leadership.
Right.
It is about having A players and basically driving the business. And we learned that at Ford, right? You really kind of focused on those A players and you drove that organization, that culture to be a top performing thing. And you see that all the time. Corporate
Right.
executives come into franchises, they put good teams in place, they get A players, and they drive those businesses, and they become very big businesses, right? Okay, what would be a third thing that we can take from the corporate world, being an executive, to kind of leveraging with a franchise business?
One thing, Pete, that I talk to my candidates about, and it goes back to the first discussion we had on building a plan. You get buried in the spreadsheets and become a spreadsheet jockey. But outside of that, you're talking to your customers, you're looking at your fast turn reports, you're looking at your mix reports. My point is as you look at a business and do your due diligence, financial acumen is very important. I had a conversation the other day, and we can't talk about financials, but I said, as you go through this, understand the mix of your revenue. How much is B2B? How much is B2C? If you're looking at a multi-revenue stream, multi-modality business, something, each one's going to make up a different percent of the revenue, and maybe each one's going to bring a little different of a margin. So you start to think about, how do you maximize your mix of revenue to maximize your profit, and ultimately what kind of cash flow it comes down to. And after you get through the operating work, you got to look at the balance sheet and understand what your working capital needs to be to support that business. And then all of a sudden, you have a framework that you learned in your corporate world of being kind of making data-driven decisions to kind of maximize your profitability, which in this case, as an entrepreneur, is not for someone else, it's for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Ford, I remember when I first started, I was a trainee. My boss made me go through a financial statement class to be able to read a financial statement. And certainly we work with dealers and they would share their financial statements. And I learned so much about this idea of financial statements and understanding cash flow, margins, and all that kind of stuff, and mixes. And those were great learnings. And that's the bottom line, is that when we talk about financials with a business, whether you're a corporation or you have your franchise business, money or financials is the language of business. You need to understand that. And if you don't understand it, if you don't have a great background in it, then go hire somebody to teach you, right? Get a good CPA, get somebody that can teach you how to do this, right? Teach you how to run cash flow reports, things like that. So the idea is that we get great experience in the corporate world. And if you don't have that experience, you hire somebody. But bottom line is, financial acumen is a big one. What would be kind of a fourth thing that we gain from the corporate world that we can apply to this idea of owning our own business?
Well, my specialty that I left the corporate space with was being a marketeer. And whether I was building brands on the communication level, or I was building products on the marketing level to look at forward development, meeting customer needs and understanding segmentation and how you were going to position a brand, who's your consumption target, who's your aspirational target, what are the emotional elements, how does it affect your heart, head, and wallet, all those things that you learned as a marketeer. If you had that skill set, absolutely translates. Now, the neat thing about franchising, some have it done for you, some don't, but all of them have already established their brand. And the question is, how do you bring that to market in concert with the efforts that your franchisor puts forward? And those can be, at different levels, and you discover that in the investigation process. So the go-to-market strategy of the brand positioning and how you do that on a big or small level is 100% translatable into your business that you go forward with as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, we were classically trained at Ford to do that stuff, right? And I think about when I ran all the incentives for Ford, right? In the, customer cash and understanding
Mhm.
the competition, understanding what customers needed in terms of
Right.
payments and stuff like that. So it translates to a small business, right? This idea of having a marketing strategy and franchises, they have the marketing strategy, they have all the positioning. But the deal is that, with marketing, that things just go wrong. It never works exactly
That's
the way
right.
you want it to work, right? And so the idea is that you can go into a franchise, they have a marketing plan, and guess what? Some of it may not work. That's just life. But if you take the experience you learned in the corporate world of adjusting things, right? Okay, this isn't working. How do we adjust that to make it better? So you take that experience from the corporate world of taking a branding position or marketing plan and adjusting it. It's not any different when you have a franchise business, right? They got a marketing plan. It's going to go well. It's going to have trouble some areas. You take your experience and you make it better. All right. What's a fifth one? What's another thing we can take from being a corporate executive to running our own business?
Operation excellence. We all are operators and we do it to different degrees. We went through all these things, and I think we've seen this in some of our franchisees that they've taken their Six Sigma black belt approach to process management, or they've looked at operating procedures. And in my business, it was workflows. I created workflows in the first franchise to support the operating system that the franchisor provided us, and did it in a way just so that we could repeat it and built multiple locations without reinventing the wheel all the time. And the good thing about those is when we're running operational excellence, in the corporate world, it's, sometimes the Titanic, sometimes it's the speedboat. But when you have your own business, you can move on a dime. You can make these changes, but the things that I took away from how I built a team, how I managed that team through workflows and through operations and scheduling and optimization, whether it's a supply chain or it's a vendor relationship, man, all those things come to play when you're running a business.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite things at Ford was going into a new department and trying to figure out how I could maximize the efficiency of it. Right. It was kind of my favorite thing to do. I made many changes and stuff like that. And it's not any different with the franchise business, right? You're going to have all the systems, you're going to have all the procedures, but the deal is, can you make them better? And can you put a plan in place to deliver upon those, making them repeatable so that it experiences always the same? And so this idea of operational excellence, that's something you gain in the corporate world. It's a great education. And if you take that and use that same mindset, that operational excellence with a small business, it just makes it so much better. And you see people doing it all the time, executives coming in, they use Six Sigma. Like, I think I'm a green belt, right? I went through all that
Right.
training at Ford. We use that stuff. When I had my own business, I used the same kind of stuff that I learned, the process enhancements, making things better. That's the idea behind it. All right. What's
Right.
a sixth thing we can take from being a corporate executive, that experience, to owning a franchise business?
Well, we talk about risk, and I'm not real good at this because I'm like full throttle. I'm definitely not the brake. I'm the gas pedal in our relationship with my business partner and my wife. But I think, as a corporate executive, you do think about how do you mitigate risk. I always say you want to mitigate risk, just look at what you see in the mirror. It's about you. But the things of, okay, who's out there from competition? Are you mystery shopping the competition? Remember, we used to hire people to go in and mystery shop the new car and the used car and the service department and bring that into our dealers and talk to them about it. I think those thoughts about keeping your ear to the ground and understanding, okay, I think this is pretty good. I can't live in my own world with rose-colored glasses, which I often do. But what out there is creating risk for me. And we did that all the time, maybe more times than others in some positions we had. But I think risk management is something that you learn in the corporate world and you can apply as well into the franchising space.
No, absolutely. And I think about that when we just talk about business in general, whether it's a large corporation or it is a small business, there's always risk with business, right? There's risk and there's reward. And so you can't eliminate risk when it comes to business. But what we try to do with a franchise is to mitigate that risk. Somebody else has already figured out all the systems and processes and procedures, the brand. And so you plug in with your experience and your leadership skills and you follow the system. And that allows you to make less mistakes, right? And that allows you then to save capital, and capital is a lifeblood business. But it can also save you time, right? So we're always assessing risk. So as you look at investing in a franchise, you're assessing, hey, what risk is associated with investing in this business? But more importantly, when you're operating the business, you know, I ran very large groups at Ford. We're always assessing the risk. What's going on? How can that impact our business? How can we adjust based on what is happening? Preparing for things, or simply put, having contingency plans. So certainly risk is always there. We need to be aware of it and address it and kind of take it and make it to our advantage, opposed to having it take advantage of us. What would be a seventh thing that we can take great experience from the corporate world and apply it to owning our own business?
Well, when I think of franchising, you know, you're not on an island by yourself. By that, I mean you have a franchisor that is cheering on your success because they live on royalties, and your success is their success. You have fellow franchisees that aren't competing with you; they want you successful, and you start networking to understand what's making them successful and what are the things that they wouldn't repeat that weren't so successful. So I think your ability to build relationships and network within a system naturally flows into the franchise space because, you know, the people that you validate a franchise, if you move forward with that franchise, they're going to become your friends. And you're going to know them for a long time. You're going to see them at the annual conferences. So that's from an internal standpoint. And external standpoint, how do you build a B2B business? How do you be part of the community? How do you build referrals? And Pete, you've done this. I mean, look at your leverage of your executive network and what you've turned it into.
Yeah, right. I mean, and that's it's life or business is about relationships, building those relationships. And that's about having partners, or partnerships, or mentors, or even just being engaged with customers or the community. And that's when I left the corporate world and I started my first business, I really did leverage my contacts, my relationships. So I went out and got, for lack of better terms, mentors, people that I leaned on from that standpoint, develop partnerships with other people doing the same thing, to literally being engaged in the community, the Chamber of Commerce, developing those relationships. And so it worked out really well for me. And I learned all that stuff from Ford, right? It's about building those relationships with the dealers, with, you know, the other things. And I learned something from one of my first bosses. His name was Bill Stang. You probably remember Bill, right?
Yeah, sure.
Bill was an ultimate people person. I think he was from Kansas, but he was the guy. Mm-hmm. And I got my first assignment to go up to Detroit. And I was in Dallas and I had to go up to Detroit. And he goes, Pete, I want to teach you something. He goes, it's about the relationships when you get to the corporate headquarters. So what I want you to do is when you are needing something, I don't want you to pick up that phone that's on your desk. I want you to get out of your chair and go over to whatever floor it is and go talk to that person and build a relationship. And that was one of the strongest lessons that I ever learned. So instead of calling people, I would literally go up to their desk and talk to them and build those relationships. And that really made a difference, I think, in developing relationships and enhancing my network of other executives at Ford.
Absolutely. 100%. That's a great one.
All right. What would be anything that we could kind of take from our being a corporate executive to literally driving and leveraging it with the business?
Well, I would say you cannot set it and forget it. It just doesn't work. And, you know, you can expect what you inspect. And by that, I mean, you have to be in a mode of learning all the time and adapting to anything that comes before you. It ties to maybe being opportunistic or maybe having a growth mindset. But you need to embrace what the franchisor brings to you because, like you said earlier, they have a proven business concept with an operating system that has a playbook. All right. You're there to execute it and you got to learn. All right. So you got to adapt. You got to understand what's made them successful and put it to work in your local market. And that's essentially what they're trying to do. They're not represented. and they need you to represent the brand, and you and your working capital are going to go make that business successful. Only if you continue to learn and adapt as you move forward.
Hey, learning is critical, right? And you're either going forward or you're going backwards. And if you're not learning, whether it's on a personal level or professional level, you're going backwards. So we always need to do that. And we learned that at Ford, right? We had so much training and stuff like that, and retraining and things like that. Well, it's not any different with a franchise. It's designed to train you, and it's designed to be there to help to continue to train you. And the idea of learning is adapting things. And I'll give you an example at Ford. Right. We used to send all our incentive announcements, like how we're going to do incentives, to dealers through a batch system overnight. And the wild web came along, the internet, and basically I was tasked with figuring out how we take the internet and announce or give the incentives to dealers immediately. Right. So I worked with an outside company to do that. And only were we able to do that because we were in a learning mode. We wanted to learn what's next. How do we improve? And Daryl Hazel's the one that basically said, listen, we got to figure this out. We got to learn how to be the best at delivering these incentive programs to dealers so they get them on a timely basis. They understand them so that we can get them into the market faster. And that his quest for us to always be learning, it always will stick with me. And I applied that when I had my own businesses, right? And the idea behind it is learning. I spent a lot of money. I spent 10% of my income goes to developing me as a business person, as an individual. I just believe so much in that. And with a franchise system, you have all that, but you always have to be having that mindset of growth or learning. All right. What would be a ninth thing that we can take from our corporate experience and we can apply it to a business?
Well, if there are challenges, revenue fixes most problems. And so if you got a challenge and you're thinking you got a problem, you're going to start chasing revenue. And when you start chasing revenue, you're going to hopefully take a very customer-centric approach, right? If you're not focused on the customer and you're not understanding what they need and what they don't need, why they're buying, why they're not buying, you're never going to fix your revenue problem if you have, or you're not going to capture all the revenue opportunities that are in front of you. And customers' needs or wants or desires change. So stay on it. Be focused on the customer. Be in tune with them, and I think that's super important. A skill set that you learned at Ford Motor Company or other businesses at Terex to be customer centric.
Oh, we learned the hard way. I mean, you and I we worked kind of side by side with the development of cars, right, and trucks. And you remember the material cost reductions, right? Engineers would want to take stuff out of cars.
Oh my gosh.
Right? And you'd say, listen, I think the customer kind of likes that. And I remember getting into a fight with an engineer because they wanted to, we had in the Grand Marquis, we had invested engineering dollars to take the whip antenna out of the car, right? The old wire, the tall antenna on the front hood, right? And they paid to put it in the glass, right? So some engineer comes back and says, listen, what we want to do is we're going to take out the in-glass antenna. We're going to put it back into the hood in a whip antenna. And I said, do you think customers are going to really like that? And they're like, well, it's going to save us $2 a car. And I thought to myself, you've lost complete understanding of what the customer is, right? So as a business owner, we always want to understand what the customer needs or wants. And, I was just reading something about the Ritz-Carlton, and they talked about the customer experience going to the Ritz-Carlton. And they basically said the experience with dealing with employees, that experience, if the first 5 touch points go well, that customer will be a thriving fan. If the first touch points when you go to the hotel are not good, that person's going to be complaining, right? It's that simple. And so it's always keeping the customer in front of us. And whether that's an executive and you're running a big group or you have a small business, it is about the customer experience, and it is keeping them first. It's always thinking about how does this apply to the customer? So that's a great one. I love that one. It brings back great memories. All right. What is a 10th one? When we talk about this idea of going from being a corporate executive to owning our own business, what's the 10th thing we can take from that corporate experience?
I think there's one, and I think I kind of failed at it in some ways because I never had the time to devote to it. And maybe that's just an excuse. But when you're in the community and when you have a local business and when you're the face of the business and when you're the face to all your customers and vendors, community is so important on the level because of your local franchise, because you are the brand. So think community engagement as you go to work, whether it's, there's a dry cleaner here down in Tennessee that I always went to. Why? Because that dry cleaner hung a banner at one of my son's hockey game and was always there. And I was like, hell, man, if they can afford a banner, I'm going to give them my all dry cleaning business. And I've been with them there for 15 years. So that local community engagement, which was a simple gesture, just brought me a customer for life. And I've moved around and I still drive up to go to that dry cleaner. So community engagement, I think, is super important.
Yeah, and I think this is a big one. I learned at Ford, and you did too, because we called on the Ford dealers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the Ford dealers were amazing at being engaged in the communities.
Right.
And, and I got to tell you that one of my very good friends is a Ford dealer, and he's very engaged in the community, sponsoring teams and doing food drives and doing things for vets and stuff like that. And it's engaged. Is one of my other friends would say is that when we have a business, we're hyper local. We're engaged in the community. And as executives, we have a hard time doing that. But you can learn to understand that it is about community. And when you have your own business, it is such an important part to be engaged. And so maybe we learn that at a higher level as an executive. But when we become a business owner or franchise owner, then we learn really, darn, it's really important. And we learn that also as customers, right? As you mentioned, your dry cleaning, buying cars, from this point, it is it. So bottom line is that we take a look at being an executive. You are classically trained to become a business owner. There are at least, we could probably cover more, 10 things that you can take from your corporate experience and you can leverage it with a business owner. Now, why do you go and you leverage it with a franchise? Well, because a franchise is a proven system. It's got the systems, the process, the procedures. So bottom line is it's just an easier path to becoming an entrepreneur. So it's an easier way to leverage what you've learned to go start that business, to build something for yourself so that you can take control of your destiny, to build wealth or live life on your terms. Or for you, you would say being an empowered franchisee, right? So escape the corporate world and hire yourself and become an empowered franchisee. And if you like what you heard today, right, Dave and I are here to help executives just like you that is listening. The idea that you have a great corporate career, but you just know you have more in you. You just know that you are done with the corporate rat race and you want to explore franchising. I encourage you to go to the Empowered Franchisee and check out and set up a quick conversation with Dave, or go to Hire Yourself and set up a quick call with me. We're here to help. Our service is free, but bottom line is we're here to help you. If you like what you heard today, I encourage you to subscribe, follow us. We are always here to help you.
Great job, Pete. Love the subject today. Look forward to hearing from all the people that are listening up there.
Thanks for tuning in to the Escape and Empower podcast. We hope today's discussion has inspired you to consider franchise ownership as a path to living life on your own terms. Start your journey towards financial freedom and flexibility. Connect with Dave at empoweredfranchisee.com or Pete at hireyourself.com. Until next time.